Hey there, welcome to the 11th episode of Under the Radar. I'm pleased to be back. It's been at least a week and a half or almost two since the last episode, and just about time to get another one out. So in this episode, I'm going to be covering a band that actually was around in the late 90s in the Chicago suburban area, a local like punk rock / there's some ska punk influence without horns. But a band from the suburbs called Logan's Loss.
Hi, we are Logan's Loss, right here from the science fiction reading room.
Now, I went to see this band along with another band called Knockout, who Knockout at the time had just signed to Fearless Records and was about to record their debut for that label. So that was my first time seeing Knockout, and it was at this place called Back to the Office, which was this kind of like bar that they turned into like an all-ages venue, just like one night a week or whenever they could put on the shows. But it was a really cool place in the burbs. That was my first time attending Back to the Office, as well as seeing these bands. So yeah, the Logan's Lost story goes back to the late 90s when they released their first full-length, which was recorded in part by Matt Allison, and then they had put out another release that was recorded by John Emerson on Note to Self Records. And Note to Self also was a label owned by Brian Bennis that put out some other releases of other friends' bands and local bands that I knew, kind of the precursor to some other labels that I'll be bringing up as I continue on in episodes to come. So when I was at Back to the Office and watching Logan's Lost play, I remember them playing a song and specifically saying, this is on the new Sinister Label compilation CD, a song called Mannheim. So I loved that song and I purchased that compilation, which is in my hands right here. It had a lot of different bands on it, some of which were bands that were on Johann's Face and bands that they were putting out. Like some of the bands were like Arma Angelus, Division, Sig Transit Gloria, Mexican Cheerleader, Kung Fu Rick. So it was a pretty stellar comp at the time in 2001 that this had come out. But yeah, I remember loving the song Mannheim.
Well, there's a price I have to pay, respecting every single day to find the constants in my life. I just can't shake the warm feeling of life. Maybe I'll feel better in the morning. Mannheim, making promises I can't keep, deflating dreams in my sleep. Where I roam, Mannheim, rest assured I'm on my way.
So yeah, that was my first time hearing about Sinister Label. Sinister is definitely a label that I'll be mentioning again as it went on to release music by Spitalfield, Preacher Gun to Texas, Frontside, He Who Corrupts. And Sinister actually released a compilation / collection of all the out-of-print and compilation and 7-inch tracks by a pretty legendary band, which I've mentioned before in this episode, that was on Johann's Face Records, called Oblivion. In my opinion, Sinister Label was one of the very few independent labels in the Chicago suburbs putting out quality art on a regular basis. So today's Spotlight release will be the final release and CD EP by Logan's Loss, called Riot, released on Sinister Label. The band definitely changed their sound a lot on this release. I would say this is their strongest effort as a band before disbanding. The recordings of these songs were a lot better than the previous material.
Balance on the balcony where we float so weightlessly. Urban beats sweep silent streets. Have this night with us to keep. Don't you
And Logan's Lost was a very hard-working band. They would tour a lot.
Is this what you wanted? 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 What you wanted? Is this what you wanted? Bury me in the sands of time. You don't know just what you'll find. Bury me in the sands of time. Running far from who we are. Our destiny is never far. Bury me in your sands of time. Sands of time. You are mine. Sands of time.
And when they finally broke up, some of the remaining members formed a band called Divide by Zero, which featured Brian and TJ from Logan's Lost, which also was a Sinister Label release. Craig Teedy, the singer of Logan's Lost, he went on to book shows at Metro and work for the Metro. And I remember personally emailing Craig back and forth when Midwest Blue first started playing Metro, and definitely appreciate him. He's a great singer, nice dude. Some solid tunes on this effort.
This is Riot like.
When summer got cruel and calculated, your eyes were lined, they're sedated. We are dreaming the same dreams. We are blind, we are numb, we are setting in the sun. We are downtown dreaming of summer. Maybe this year will be better than the last. Your breath so clear. Live my life with regrets buried in the past. Your glory days.
Again, I would say that in our local scene, like Sinister Label was kind of the most active, along with another label that I'll be covering in episodes called LLR Records or Little League Records. So I look forward to presenting some of that material as well. So yeah, if you like what you're hearing by Logan's Lost, you can go on Discogs and probably, make a deal if you're into that. The only thing that I found as far as their music being online was I found a page on Bandcamp that has a bunch of different artists from like the Dupage scene, which includes the song Mannheim on this compilation. So I'll leave a link there if you want to check that out. I should be dropping a new episode soon. Been working on a lot of different things here in my studio. I'm working on a mixtape right now for Slave to Servant, which I'll talk more about that as that develops. Been just approving mixes for my full-length record, and I got a couple more B-sides that I want to release as singles. I'll probably do that relatively soon, but yeah, keep on the lookout. I'll have a new episode for you soon, and thanks for your time.